Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Daniel chapter 6 and 7. Now, Daniel 6 is arguably one of the most famous stories in the entire Bible, that of Daniel and the lion's den. Now, remember that King Darius, the Mede, who had taken out Babylon, was ruling over the land, and he had placed Daniel in a position of authority. And in fact, it says in the beginning of that chapter that he had in mind to make him over the whole land. And jealousy crept in. The other rulers came, convinced Darius, who was obviously an arrogant and proud man, to get everybody to worship him. Now, obviously, Daniel wasn't going to do that. The penalty was being thrown into a lion's den. And the king is distressed that this is what he has to do. It says there in verse 3 that because Daniel had an excellent spirit, he so distinguished himself. He was a hard worker, he was intelligent, he had extreme wisdom. The king was obviously had a soft spot for him, was very distressed. Anyway, God rescues Daniel, keeps the lions' mouths closed all night. The king comes out in the morning to see if his favorite ruler is alive. He still is. He sees the injustice for what it was, and the people that came up against Daniel are all thrown into the lion's den themselves. So the chapter ends, though, with this amazing decree issued by Darius. Remember, this is a pagan king. He says, I decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God. He will not be destroyed. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders. And it says, so Daniel prospered under the reign of Darius. Now, chapter 7, Daniel has a dream. This time, it's a parallel dream to the one that he interpreted in chapter 2. So, it says basically it was in the time of Belshazzar. So in other words, the timing of this dream was before the Babylonians were taken out by the Medes and Persians. And he sees 6 kingdoms, different kingdoms. 4 of them are human kingdoms, and one of them is a satanic kingdom, and the other one is the Messiah's kingdom. And basically this is what he sees. He sees a lion, an animal, with wings like an eagle, and that parallels the Babylonian kingdom. And then he sees another beast, a bear with ribs in its mouth, and that parallels the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. And then he sees a leopard with wings, which represented the Greek kingdom, Alexander the Great. And then a dreadful and terrible beast, which represents the Roman Empire. Now, verse 12 says that these kingdoms have come and gone, but that a residue of them goes on into the final satanic kingdom. It says this, the other beasts that have been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. Now, this last period is what other chapters in the Bible, in Thessalonians and Revelations, calls the Antichrist's period. It's his kingdom. Revelation 13 through 19, an evil kingdom develops, which is going to be destroyed at the coming of Jesus. In Nebuchadnezzar's dream, it was the big rock that came rolling down the mountain, destroying the statue. In this one, it's described, this beast is described as a beast with 10 horns, which represent 10 kings of 10 kingdoms. This is again seen in Revelation 13, and horns represent rulers. And so if you combine the picture in Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel 9 actually, and then Revelation 13 through 17, you see this last dispensation, this last age before the coming of Jesus is going to be governed by these world rulers, who's led by this big horn that grows up in between them, which the book of Revelation would probably say that's the Antichrist. And then this kingdom is destroyed by the coming of the Son of Man in this particular story, or by the rolling of the big rock in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Now, when we get to Daniel chapter 9, we'll get more detail in how those events play out. But this is what Daniel was looking at. He was looking at the Babylonians, the Medes, the Greeks, and then the Romans. And then he saw a residue of those evil kingdoms carrying through, and Satan putting together a last great kingdom, which is ruled by his League of Nations and a ruler in those League of Nations who make war against the Lamb. But that is going to be brought down by the coming of Jesus, and that kingdom will be destroyed by the coming of the Son of Man. Beautiful to see that thousands of years ago, God spoke into our very day and age, and we live today.